Hey everyone, welcome to Group Text. Okay, ready for this? We're going with the goofy this morning on our intro. She came to our windows and we brought her some water. And now Melissa Etheridge is back to tell us she's not broken. The Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter, activist, mother, rock legend has a documentary series out called Melissa Etheridge, I'm Not Broken, now streaming on Paramount+. It follows her journey from writing a new song inspired by the letters from 5 residents of the Topeka Correctional Facility to performing a concert at the prison grounds. She also has a new album of that concert called I'm Not Broken, live from Topeka Correctional Facility. And if that wasn't enough, she is currently on tour, 2 separate sort of sections of the tour, one with Jewel, one with the Indigo Girls. Jules, by the way, a Group Text alum. Tickets are available at melissaetheridge.com. Melissa, welcome to Group Text. Now, I know you don't remember this, but I do. It was so long ago, that the first time we actually met. So I'm going to jog your memory, which is,
Okay.
this is how long ago. I was working for MTV, and you had just won your first Grammy, and we were in the press room. And you came up to me and said, my name's Melissa too, to which I believe I responded, I know, because I had already been a fan. And if I remember clearly, you called your mom, I think from a payphone, backstage after you won.
Yeah, very possibly so. Yes, I think that was, it was after my father had just passed away. So I think I called her and was like, hey, because I was the first one. That's a big deal for a little girl from Kansas, you know.
It's a big deal for anybody. So I feel like, but that is one of those weird memories I have. I also remember that I was wearing this dress with fringe, and I believe I was trying to be super cool, which I never have been, and wearing Doc Martens with the dress.
But it was the early 90s, and you were right in there. That's what we did.
Yeah, especially with MTV. Like,
Yeah,
and I was sitting on a table. I thought I was so freaking cool.
you
Anyway,
were cool.
I was faking cool. It's all imposter syndrome, which is all for my therapist. Anyway, your new documentary is very serious as we pivot. I'm Not Broken. It chronicles the process you went through writing a new song, which was inspired by these letters you received from these 5 different women who were incarcerated in your home state of Kansas. Okay, for people who don't know, when a fan writes you from prison, you can always tell because it has a specific number on it. So you see the number. What made you actually want to open it?
Well, actually, let me be clear with this. The beginning of this whole thing actually started with me wanting to do a concert at the prison. I grew up in Leavenworth, Kansas. And if you know anything about Leavenworth, it might be that we have a lot of prisons there, especially the big federal penitentiary and the big army prison. And when I was very young, Johnny Cash came to my town of Leavenworth. We didn't get to see him, but the prisoners did. It was a concert just for the prisoners.
A very famous concert.
Yes, very, very
and
famous.
An album.
Yeah, the whole thing. And so I always had in my mind that, well, prisons must be a place of fine entertainment and stuff, which wasn't true. It was just Johnny Cash. But as I got a little older, I would go into these prisons and I would perform different things with my high school, with some like musical groups around town and stuff. It was a thing we did, and it was always impressed upon me how appreciative they were. And it was one of the first times I could see people listen to music and be filled up and happy for a moment. And I always wanted to go back and do that. And so finally, the opportunity came actually with MTV Films and Paramount Plus and Sun Records. They all said, yes, we will fund, we will put the money up for this project. So and it took us a couple of years to get through the red tape of prisons. And the warden of the women's penitentiary in Kansas, of the Topeka Correctional Facility, is amazing. And after we did all this, she actually was promoted, and now she's like the warden of all wardens in Kansas. So it started with that. Then we reached out and said, does anybody want to write? and these 5 women were kind of chosen. They knew that we were going to film them, so they really vetted who the women were. We didn't want to, we wanted to be really, really mindful of these are women whose lives have been disrupted. They are incarcerated. There's all kinds of issues. So they started writing me, and that's when I started getting their letters and hearing their stories. And then before the concert, a couple months before, I actually went in and met with them. And was really taken by their generosity, and their openness and their willingness to discuss things. And so after getting to know them, I was like, okay, now I'm going to write a song for them and all the women who were incarcerated. And the one thing that really impressed me was their resilience and their willingness to change, and their willingness to understand that it was their early childhood trauma that got them where they were, that got them onto drug addiction to try to numb that pain, and that this is something that we can all kind of start to look at and maybe change our hearts and minds about how we think about incarcerating people who have early trauma that is more like a mental illness.
Yeah, these women definitely talked about how the letter writing process was very cathartic for them. And obviously it was very inspiring to you. At which point did it click on your head as a songwriter? Because every songwriter has different processes. Go, okay, I can start putting pen to paper. Here's the bridge. Here's this. I'm just playing on my guitar. This is going to work. Because there had to be a light bulb moment, I would assume, not being a songwriter, with every song there kind of is.
Yeah, you have that moment that inspires you, that excites you, that then you grow on, and you pull it out and you create it. Sometimes it takes a long time, and I'm always really patient with myself, because I don't believe in saying, oh, I have writer's block and getting all messed up. It's just like, it will be there when it's supposed to be there. I've always given that belief in myself. And so with this, I think the part was when there were 2 things that really impressed me. One was personal with myself. I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine who had just gone through a personal change, where she had this light bulb moment where she went, wait a minute, I'm not broken. It's not me. I'm not broken. I can get through this. And so I grabbed onto that and went, wait a minute, I'm not broken. Nobody's broken in there. We all can learn and move past this and make different choices. And then the other part was when I was in the prison, and I was really touched by how and inspired by how many people, from the warden to the people working there to the inmates even, all saying how they understood that hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. And that was like, that's it right there. So I knew that had to be in there, and I'm not broken. So after that, then it was, no, I knew I wanted to lift them up. I wanted to have them feel like they had power, that they were just going through this and they could get to the other side. So I wrote, I'm a burning woman. I'm worth it. I'm not broken.
And how long did the song take you? And I only ask because I know, just in my writing process, when I'm doing a book or watching my mother all those years, her process, which was the idea or something, a funny line, and then refining it and refining it and refining it and working it on stage.
Yeah. That I didn't have the luxury of. I had to just trust. The first time, what you see in the film and what you hear is the very first time we ever played it. I didn't even teach it to the band until, the Friday, and the concert was on Sunday. So I refined it within myself while I was on the road that year. And it probably wasn't really done until about a couple of weeks before we went there. But I wanted to give myself time, and the musical part, that just comes from sitting and really thinking, okay, I want it to move people like this. I want it to move, but I want it to feel good, sound good, but strong and powerful. And you just refine it. It's all about editing and refining.
It's because it is such a process. When did you think to yourself, okay, this, not that anything ever really is done, because
Right.
I'm sure when you're performing live, you find new ways to keep it fresh for yourself. But when did you say to yourself, okay, I can share this with the band? It's done, and then in parentheses, because you're an artist, enough.
Enough. It's done enough. Exactly. Well, that would be like when the time ran out, when we had to rehearse. I'm like, this is it. Now I'm going to put it together in a final product. And the band always lifts a song up and really puts it in its place. You know, oh, there it is. And so they were fantastic.
So you talk about going to the prison.
Yeah.
Which, my general knowledge, or all my knowledge of prison, comes from TV and movies where there's isolation and punishment, and that's used as a form of control. Were you very surprised by the idea of what that particular warden had created, in the idea of you work on creating the kind of person you want to go back into society?
Yeah, I was inspired by what I saw. I have great hope by what I saw. In the prison systems, there's a whole lot of people in charge of it that really believe in punishing, and we have to punish, and everybody needs to know they can't do anything wrong because we will punish them. And they come from that place. And when I got to TCF, they're like, look, your punishment was that they took your freedom away, and you're here. I don't need to punish you anymore beyond that. You're already serving your punishment here. Now, the warden told me the minute that a woman checks into TCF, everyone there is working to get them back out, to get them functional in society. That's their whole goal.
And that's a very different model.
Yes, it is. And yet, I actually just went to the prison again 2 weeks ago, and there's been a huge change. They're talking. The women that talked about their issues in the film, they showed it to the rest of the prison. The women have formed these groups where they're actually talking about their trauma now, and it makes such a difference. Each of these women have a job outside. They do work release where they come back in. They're very hopeful for when they're going to get out. It's just a real palpable change. And the warden and the prison keeps getting calls from prisons all over the country and all over the world. The Philippines came to study what they're doing, so that they could see, because I believe our minds are changing about punishment and wrongdoings and early childhood trauma. So I love this change that's happening, and I can absolutely see it, and it's very inspiring.
Is something that comes out early, an early idea in the film, is that and you just touched upon, the other residents are helping other residents, especially with the idea of breaking the chain. That there's sort of, and that's a very evolved way of thought that's very much new to in the last 20 years of society. How do they even identify? Because a lot of people just don't know. They don't have the access growing up to help. They don't know that therapy is shameful. How do they know, shit, there is a chain here, and it's up to me and my generation to break it and change the narrative? Because it is a new, fairly recent concept.
Yeah. Even my generation, as we grew up, we were, just don't air your dirty laundry, don't say anything, just, buck up and go through it, and, work hard and whatever. And there's just no happiness in that whatsoever. And these women, as they are in there and they come off their drug addictions, they get clean, and they're just raw, and they start telling their stories, and they start comparing their stories and saying, wait a minute, yeah, that happened to me. Wow. Well, each of us have been trying to kill this pain that we had in our childhood. Mostly it's from physical, emotional, sexual abuse. It's really clear that like over 90% of the women especially are in, and it started with that, and it goes to drug abuse and, some man usually who says, okay, and it just goes down this road. And it's very similar in each person. And so when they realize, I'm trying to kill this pain that I'm trying to stuff down because I don't know what to do with it as a child, what happened? And then the more they talk about it, the more services that are set up for them, and the more they know that that's not them, it doesn't define them, that they can create a life now. Now is all there is. Let's not suffer in regret and stuff. Let's move forward. And it's forward thinking, but it's possible and it works. That's the thing I think they see is they now see these women starting to flourish, starting to get power and ground and air, and they're taking off. And I look forward to the next 10 years. I hope I get to come back and do another one where we, catch up on the women that we saw and where they are and what has happened.
How did you sell this? Because I always wonder, how did you sell this? Because it's not like a concert where the record label says, oh, well, we'll make it up in merch. You know what I mean?
You're right. No.
Who owns the parking?
Yeah, right.
Do we get a cut? How did you convince them that this was a worthwhile project? Because it is a what we would call a labor of love, or really a vanity project, yet you got funding for it.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it was a lot of really smart and beautiful men and women at MTV Films and Paramount Plus. They early on heard, okay, Melissa Etheridge concert, the prison, because I have had this hope for years. I've been wanting to, and it just worked. The production company, Shark Pig, that's the name of the company that was the documentary. It's like 3 people, and they were amazing. They never got in the way. They just made everything so natural. They were really, really loving, and Amy Scott was the director. And they always had this wonderful vision of music and people, and how it affects each them and myself, and how it fit together. They had that in their minds, and they just kept moving forward with it. And I'm just so grateful to all of them.
You touched on drug abuse. You also sang a song called "The Shadow of a Black Crow" that you don't do in concert in general because it is so personal. It's about your son, who we know you lost in Beckett from an overdose. What was Beckett like?
Oh, Beckett was, when he was happy, everyone was happy. Everyone in the room was happy when he was happy. When he wasn't happy, he could affect the whole room. He was, as a child, I never got him tested or anything, but I imagine he might have been on some spectrum, might have been that. Now the things that we look into now, he had so much humor and drive and joy even in the things that he loved, but he just had a hard time with the things he didn't love. He would spend so much time pushing against the things he didn't like that the things he loved would just fall aside. And so one of the things he loved was snowboarding, and he was really good at it. He went to camps. He got so far that the Aspen snowboard team actually asked him to come train with them.
That's amazing.
So he was starting to do that, and it was one of the only things he loved. He always struggled in school, so this was just real hope for him. And he took a big jump, and he broke his ankle in like 2 places, and he was just never going to be able to snowboard like that again. And it really brought on a crushing depression because that was his only thing, and physical pain. And when you have that, and a doctor back then so easily said, here's Vicodin. Once the Vicodin ran out, he was old enough to go to the streets. He was, 18, and he started, street drugs, and then that leads to heroin. And before you know it, it was fentanyl, and he was dead 4 days later. It just does that. And there's no reaching them. There's no saving them. And Shadow of a Black Crow is just about, that addiction and that follows anyone. But Beckett was, we were blessed to have him for the 21 years we had him, and he couldn't handle it, and he left too soon.
I think about this as a parent. I can't, and I've had tremendous loss in my life. We're actually on the anniversary of my father's suicide. So I understand he had the depression as well as the physical pain, because he had surgery and it was not healing correctly. And it was 30 something years ago. So there wasn't the knowledge now about pharmacology, and for him, it became a whole thing that everything was being treated differently, and it was a lethal mix. So I can't imagine, first of all, as a parent, I have a 23-year-old son, having to go through just knowing what's happening and trying to help. How did you take care of his siblings?
Oh, my 3 other children are angels. They also loved him so much. We all knew he was struggling. We all knew there was nothing we could do, that we just loved him. We were devastated, broken. The whole family has really agreed to celebrate him always, to talk about him when we think about him, to remember things, to bring him into conversation. None of us have pushed anything down. And we're all really clear with how he struggled, and we all do not, maybe my oldest daughter, who was closest to him, only like a year and a half apart, she still suffers, and we all really want to, surround her with a lot of love when anniversaries and stuff come up. But the rest of us, and her too, she's really doing well. We all are. I want to. I'm so happy, with my living children and my angel, and we live in the moment, and we know that he would not want us to suffer in any way for his choice.
I interviewed someone parents the other day that had lost a son. And one of the things they discussed was making sure their older son felt appreciated and loved as an individual, and not saddled with feeling continuously compared, or them living in that way, to make sure that they celebrate him. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was such an interesting way to describe it.
Yeah. It would be easy to let someone's death overshadow everything, and to make every Christmas or birthday or whatever, to be a puddle, and we do not do that. We have all chosen to celebrate, and I think it's really healthy for all of us.
You started the Etheridge Foundation in response to this. What's the elevator pitch of the Etheridge Foundation?
The Etheridge Foundation was created because my son passed away from an opioid addiction. And opioid use disorder is just beginning to be understood and studied. And when I looked into the rehabilitation world, there was only one choice, and that works for many. Your 12-step programs work for many people, and great. But there's a great amount, especially of young men, who push away from that. And there is something called plant medicine. Now, you've heard of your psilocybins, which are mushrooms, and ayahuasca. There's a root in Africa called ibogaine, and these are psychedelics These are hallucinogenics that have been used for thousands and thousands and thousands of years all through time. And they have only recently been, since the 70s, illegal. But these are healing plants that are not addictive, that can take and have, and the Etheridge Foundation is one of the first groups that are raising funds for the research so we can have the data, so we can go to governments who have outlawed these things saying, look, here is data that they are medically good, that this is something that needs to be rescheduled so we can study it, and these can be put in the hands of facilitators that we can see this is an option for opioid use disorder. There's my elevator pitch.
There you go. That's a good. That sounds worthwhile.
Okay.
I can put a stamp of approval on that. But that brings us back to the prison, and so much. A lot of the reasons people are in prisons is because, as you said, they've gotten into drugs and alcohol. Is there anything other than the 12-step program? And do you think you may have inadvertently brought more attention to that within that particular prison? I know that's sort of a strange question.
Well, no, it is interesting because we do dance around the outside of a lot of things.
Yeah.
Trying not to, I do not want, 12-step programs have saved lives, saved many,
Yes.
many, many lives. And that works, absolutely.
And a lot of my friends, as I always say,
Yes.
there, but for the grace of God, go I. So,
Absolutely.
you know.
And it's for those who don't. And so I have nothing bad to say about 12-step programs. Love any help anybody can get. But for those that do not relate, cannot grab onto that, this is an option, and it is one that over and over is being proven. We have a study going on in Spain with ibogaine. It's iboga, which is a very, very, very strong. This is not like a recreational drug at all. This is going to change your life sort of drug. But heroin users, Spain has a program where they will support heroin users going into methadone, and they will give them, state-sponsored methadone, but then they have methadone addicts for 15, 20 years. And so they came to us and said, look, we are trying to find an option of getting them off. And so they actually helped us, and ICEERS is another group that is funding this. And the research that is coming back is so powerful. Not only do a lot of these individuals get off heroin immediately, but they also stop smoking and drinking, and they absolutely change their lives. And so this is stuff that is I know that we may be 10 years away from this ever really, coming to our homes, but we got to start somewhere.
I agree with you 100%. So I have two questions before I let you go.
Sure.
One is, have you been in touch, which I'm assuming is yes, with any of the women since you performed? With any bonds really stand out?
Yes, all 5 of them. They were so courageous. I'm so proud of them, but how they allowed themselves and their deep inner workings and thoughts and fears and emotions to be portrayed. And I went back, and my wife and I, a couple of weeks ago, I was in Kansas City, so I had a day off, so I went there, and I had dinner with them. I brought them steaks and things because the food in the prison's not so good. And the change, because it had been a year since I'd seen them, and the change in them, they were glowing. The change in the prison, you'll see there's a woman, the woman who was kind of the connection between the prison and us and sort of the outside world. Her name was Holly. She lost 140 pounds. Just huge changes in these people.
Without Ozempic.
Yeah, without, absolutely. And so, don't get me started. And so that, just seeing that change and them saying that the prison has changed and their desire, because a few of them, one's getting out in October, it's in the next 3 years, they'll all be paroled. But their look toward the future and what they want to do with their lives and how they feel like they have changed and they want to help others. Every single one of them, all 5, want to help others. And that's just it. I left that place a couple of weeks ago. It just lifted off the ground. It was such an incredible reward to see come back to me. It was amazing. And I will stay in touch with all of them for the rest of their lives.
So I have more of a showbiz question.
Hey, I can do that too.
Were they a good crowd? I can't even get this. Or was it more like a corporate gig?
Oh, you know what? I had no idea. You mean the show in the prison?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everyone's had those corporate gigs where they pay you money and everybody eats through the whole thing.
Eats and talks, yeah. And you're
Yes.
just like, okay, well, I'm just going to take my very large paycheck and go. No,
Exactly.
this was one, a very small paycheck, and 2, it was, no, I didn't know what to expect. 1, I was like, I don't know their ages. They might not even know who I am. You know, they might go, who's this? And they didn't know what to expect either. They didn't know, the inmates didn't know that I was going to bring in just a whole for real concert, lights, stage, band, everything. They thought I was just going to come in and sing a couple songs. I was like, no, this is the real thing. And from the beginning, the warden, because I was like, warden, I play music and it really gets people going and up and excited. Is this okay? And I used a few, curse words in some things. Is this okay? She kept saying, whatever you want, whatever. I said, how long can I play? Long as you want. She had just, she believed in what we were doing so much that she really let me just run it. And there's a point, and it's too bad we couldn't show it in the film because we only could show a few of the prisoners because of privacy acts and stuff. And then it took forever to clear the few that you see. It looks like there's like 60 people maybe at the concert, but there's a couple of thousand, and we couldn't show the rest. And there's one point when I was playing Bring Me Some Water that the warden was over there doing a line dance with half the prison, right? They're all dancing. And we couldn't show it because they're a bunch that we couldn't show. But it was like one of the greatest rock shows I'd ever done. They were so lifted up. And so many of them said, I forgot I was in prison. Many of them said they'd never been to a concert or hadn't seen one in 30 years. And it was one of my favorite shows I've ever done.
This just popped in my head, apropos of nothing. What was the first concert you ever went to?
You want to know? I used to say the Eagles, but then I remembered, you know what? A couple years before that, I started, one of the first bands I ever played in was a country western band, and these were older guys, and they took me to go see Buck Owens, and that was my, for real, first concert. He was a showman, Buck Owens. He was great.
For me, the Go-Go's.
The Go-Go's!
And I was only allowed to go. I went with other family friends because our parents' son was dating Belinda Carlisle, so they knew we couldn't get in that much trouble. Like there was an actual adult backstage in the green room to keep us from like wandering off. I just found the T-shirt from that concert, and by the way, they're married.
Really?
Wow. They are, yeah.
Wow.
Morgan Mason, Belinda's husband. Yeah.
There you go.
Wow.
You
Melissa
go.
Etheridge, I'm Not Broken, now streaming on Paramount Plus. New album, I'm Not Broken, live from Topeka Correctional Facility. You are on tour. Tickets are available at melissaetheridge.com. Oh my God, I'm so happy that we've met again.
And I look forward to the next time I get to see you.